Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Triangle Area SQL Server User Group's Business Intelligence and Data Science meeting. This is the last one for 2024. We're going to pick this up again in January. In the meantime, we'll also have our advanced DBA and main meetings going on through the rest of the year, so we won't be totally out of the woods. But also for TriPass members, be on the lookout. We're going to send an email for TriPass elections. Those are coming up pretty soon, so wait for that. We'll have the elections. Everything will be fine. Now, with this, I want to hand over to our final speaker for the year for the Business Intelligence and Data Science meeting. We have Greg Strzyminski, whose name I have most assuredly mispronounced, but that's par for the course. Nonetheless, Greg, please take it away.
Thanks, Kevin. Let me share my screen and let's begin. And you did very well with the surname. Regarding the name, well, my full name isn't Greg, like that's not the Polish name where I'm from, but feel free to call me Greg. My full name is Grzegorz Strzyminski, so that might be a bit of a tongue twister for you guys, but yeah, let's just stay with Greg and forget the surname, or you can say Greg S, something like that will work. With that, I would like to thank you, Kevin, thank you, Tracy, for the invitation here, and happy to be with you. So today, hello and good afternoon once again. We'll be talking about visual level security in Power BI. That name might sound a bit familiar because it sounds a bit like row level security in Power BI. That's a mechanism that comes built in like out of the box. But visual level security is something else. I will lead you through it based on a case study so that we see what's the use case, where would you need it, how can you implement it, and so on. But before we get into it, into the security issues, challenges, and use cases in Power BI, let me quickly introduce myself in a few more sentences so that you actually know who's speaking. So yeah, my name is Greg Strzyminski. I work as a senior BI developer in a company called Kearney. It's an American management consulting company. I work as more of a specialist than a straightaway consultant there in management consulting, and I specialize in Power BI specifically. That takes like 80% of business as usual, I think. So that's definitely my ace in the sleeve.
There we go. Hey, welcome back. Looks like there was a small network blip, but we've got you again.
All right. So let me maybe quickly conclude on the intro side. You can follow me on my YouTube. That's called Greg Works Power BI, and on my LinkedIn as well. Session Nice. If you'd like to stay in touch, I would be more than happy to have you there. Sorry for the network issue. Hope that won't be happening again anytime soon. Okay, with that, let's move forward to the agenda. So first of all, we will have a quick recap on the row level security, and that will also serve as an introduction to the use case on why would we need visual level security. That will be a theoretical part mixed with a live demo to see it already implemented in Power BI. Then I will talk a bit of a concept. So again, a theoretical intro to visual level security, how it works and so on. And then we will see the visual level security implemented in Power BI during a live demo. And we will also talk about securing it so that it's safe, robust, and basically can meet any audits any security audits and so on that you might have in your organization for your client or in your internal firm. Okay, with that, let's move forward. And one more point from my side, there will be dedicated time for Q&A at the very end of the session, so I will be happy to take any questions you might have then. Okay, so the goal for this session is that you know what visual level security is, you will know when to use it when it's a good idea, and of course, from the technical part, from the live demos, you should be able to implement it yourself and avoid some bad practices that might not end very well. With that, let's start with the case introduction. So we are working for Contoso, a company that sells their goods worldwide. Contoso might sound familiar to you. It's a standard data set and a company invented by Microsoft. It's not a real company. It's just a sales data set that we can pivot in a number of ways. For us, it will be mostly used splitted by geographies, so by countries to be specific. And we will have different measures there, like sales amount, gross profit, profit margin, and cost of sales. So that's what we need to know about this data set in case you haven't stumbled upon it yet. So in our use case, we'll have three personas. The first one is Greg, that's me, and I am a sales representative for Poland. So I'm responsible for overseeing the sales in Poland. That's me. So I'm like a key account manager, sales representative, something like that. The second person is Joanna, who has the same role but for USA, so for America. I tailored this use case for this session so that we are all like having some common points there. And then our third actor is Alice, who is a sales director, and she has both Joanna and me in her team. So not only USA, not only Poland, but let's say the whole world, and so on, so that she can see. She should have visibility into more than one regions, so to say further. Okay, and now the refresher on the static row level security. So let's say that we have a kind of a sales report implemented by, let's say, by an internal analytics team or by some outsourcing company that knows Power BI. The goal is so that me, as a key account manager for Poland, so that I can see in the sales report data for just Poland. That's pretty clear. I shouldn't be able to see the details on USA, to be specific. So for Joanna's region, I shouldn't be able to see France, Germany, Canada, Mexico, just Poland for me. And then, as you can guess, consequently, Joanna should have her own role to see just USA. How do we do it in Power BI? There are two approaches to the row level security. There is the static and dynamic one. So a static row level security is something in which we would create something that is called a role in Power BI desktop to be specific. And this role will somehow tell Power BI that whoever role logs in as this role will have all their data in the dashboard filtered to just Poland. So we can create a role that will be specifically called Poland, tell Power BI that this should like filter all the sales data to just Poland, and then as the last step, someone will need to assign me or more colleagues to this role so that Power BI actually knows that me as Greg, when I log in into Power BI service, I should be assigned to a role called Poland and see, well, basically just sales transactions for Poland. So how this usually works in Power BI is that we have some kind of filter, we have some kind of a dimension table on which we will apply a filter. So with the static row level security, it's enough that we just apply a filter on the countries table that later connects to the sales table, so that like each sales transaction can only occur in one country at a time. So it's a many-to-one relationship. I can draw it also. And whenever we will filter the countries table to include just a country called Poland, then automatically, as I have drawn here, I can do it once again. This filter for just Poland will propagate from one table to the other to sales. That works pretty well, and we should see then only the sales transactions that have taken place in Poland. Similarly for USA, for Joanna. So that's like the easiest approach to row level security. But this gets kind of tedious and very time-consuming to manage once we get more roles, because you can notice that, hey, I wasn't the only actor in the story. There was me, Greg, who has access to Poland. There was also Joanna, and there can be even more. So like, having 100 roles for 100 countries, and then a number of combinations. For example, Alice should have access to multiple countries, like 10, 20 or so. It can get kind of tedious to manage all of that, because you will have 10, 20, or 100 roles that will not work very well. So what Microsoft has invented and implemented a couple of years ago is another option, so a dynamic row level security. Functional is just a kind of modification of the static row level security, but with this we can keep things a bit more organized, and it will be much easier to administer. So instead of having a role per country in this use case, we'll have just one role that will be called viewer, and we will add one more table. Let's call this table that it's the mapping of users to their respective countries. And you can see that me as Greg, I have access to just Poland, while John has access to United States. This way, we add one role and add everyone to it. This role will be called viewer or key account manager, maybe, whatever works in terms of naming convention. And then this role will kind of check who is logged in, so that it will know if it's me logged in or Joanna. And it will then automatically filter first the mapping of the countries to people. Then this filter will propagate further to the countries table, which will then consequently and similarly as in the static row level security, this will filter the sales table to just Poland for me. And in case that would be Joanna, I guess you already got the message. It will go this way similarly, but will filter for just United States. So typically how this row level security basically knows who has logged in is by comparing the email of the person who is currently logged in into Power BI service or principal name with the contents of the table. So instead of saying that it's me, Greg, it's just Greg, you need to say that what's the email of me, of a specific user, so that Power BI will be able to compare the email from the table with the email of the person currently logged in. And it will just compare to who is currently viewing the report and will filter accordingly. So it's still like filtering one table and the other and so on. Okay. With that, we can see the first live demo to see basically how this row level security works and why do we need the visual level security. So for a demo purpose, I have prepared a very simple report that will contain just this one table, a couple slicers, and one more table in a sec. So let's first review the model so that we all know what's happening. First off, we've got just a table that has the list of countries, and it also has their respective sales, profit, and cost amounts. These are just measures from the model. Nothing super fancy, no crazy DAX logic included. Now, if we review the model, then we can see that we have 3 tables. That's pretty similar to the logic that you've seen in the slides. So we've got first the sales table, then the countries table, and then a table called user access. This is how I have called this mapping of users to their respective countries. So let's just quickly take a look at what's in the user access table. So in the first row, you've got me, and believe it or not, this is my email address in Carney. So this is the name that I will need to be comparing myself to. And then Joanna would have a similar email, but she doesn't really work at Carney, to be precise. So it's just an imaginary email. But you can see that if she would log in, she would have access to United States, while I would have access to Poland. Then in case Alice would log in, you can see that she has access to much more than one country. She has access to a bunch of them. So that will work as well. Next off, we have the countries table, which is just mapping of the list of unique countries and the continents they belong to. So nothing super fancy, just your standard dimension table, I would say. And then the sales table contains sales facts, so sales transactions. It has a bunch of columns. Basically, what we are interested in is the last column that says just country. So what we are connecting. Okay. With that, let's test how row-level security works here. So here you can see at the very top that my email address of the logged-in person, so what I need to be comparing to see, basically determine who is viewing the report, is this GSTRZ and so on. Let's just say that this is my email address of Greg. And this will be used to filter our user access table, and with that we should have only the first row left, and the filter for Poland should propagate to the countries table, so list of all countries, and then to the sales. Where do we create our roles for configuring row level security? It's actually here in the modeling tab, and then you click manage roles. I will click it, and I already have one role prepared. It's called viewer, and that filters the user access table, so just mapping of users to our countries. And I have a similar formula here as in the slides. So I will be comparing a column from this table, the user access table called user email, to the email of the currently logged in user. So that's just my email, and in this specific case, it will be this one. Okay, with that, there's an opportunity to test the role. So see how will I be seeing the data. Let's try to view as me. So I will now impersonate someone logging in as a member of the viewer role. And since it's me, Greg, logged in, I should see just Poland in the table. Okay, that worked pretty well. And you can see that we see the respective amounts of sales, profit, and cost. That works great. But now that was like the part that was the recap on row level security. Now let's get to visual level security. Let's imagine that we have a second visual, not just this table, we have a second one. I have another table prepared for that. Also, just a point to keep in mind, for this whole session, I'm using only the table visuals, but this technique and all the whole use case will work across any visual. So you can use charts, you can use cards, you can use any type of visual custom ones as well. I'm just using tables to make this case and the logic crystal clear. We've got another. So coming back to the main point, we've got another table that's also profit margin by country. So that is like another measure that I have calculated as the profit sum divided by the sales sum. So how profitable are we in a specific region? If I stop viewing as me, you can see that, well, there's also a number of countries that are included in this table. But, well, since I'm responsible just for the country of Poland, I am seeing only Poland in this table. But let's say that the remuneration, the compensation, and the bonus schema in the company, in Contoso, is that I need to have the profit margin to be in the top 5 in the whole world to be eligible for any bonus as a key account representative, as a key account manager, sorry. So for that, I need to know as a representative that, like, how well am I doing for this in case of profit margin. I do not really need to know what are the sales and profits and costs of other countries. I'm not really interested in that, but I should be able to see like how am I doing in terms of profit margin, so that I know that, hey, I am in the first one. I am the leader in the world. I have the best profit margin, so that means a big bonus for me probably. Or I am the 10th or 20th, so that means I will not be getting any bonus probably. So what we would be looking to see is basically the access level, the row level security differing by visual. That's basically the point of the visual level security. So the visual on the right hand side, I just want to see Poland, so my standard scope. But on the visual on the right hand side, I would like to see some additional rows. I would like to see, let's say, maybe 5 more, or in case that should be the whole world, then I should be seeing 10 more, 100 more rows probably. But let's say that we only need maybe 5, so that I need to compare versus USA, versus Germany, France, and United Kingdom, so that we just do not have 100 rows here. So basically, that use case, so that we see different level of accesses in the same report by differing by visual, is not something that comes out of the box. And it is really troublesome to implement, because the row level security mechanism itself is implemented by Microsoft, and rightfully so, in a very robust manner. And that means that it is very difficult to cheat it for safety reasons, so that we do not run in any data leaks and confidentiality problems. So in my opinion, that's very good, but sometimes you need more power, even though you need to take more responsibility for the power. So, okay, let's try to get into the theory of visual level security in that case, how we can achieve our effect. So I will get back to the slides for a couple of minutes, and then we will be back into the live demo again. Cool. So, concept of VLS. From our short demo in Power BI, we already know that we need to have like different access scopes. So in one visual, speaking of me, of Greg, we should see just Poland. So that's this one, and this was the left table. Let's say a table with details, with sensitive details that should be only visible to the person responsible for the given country. On the other hand, on the right-hand side visual, let's say a more aggregated, a more general one in this case, we should see a different set of data. So we should see more countries: Poland, Germany, France, United States, UK, and so on. So it's basically a kind of a different role. But if I would assign myself to 2 or 3 roles at the same time, I would also see too many countries in the table on the left-hand side, which would not be the ideal solution, since it contains, we said that it contains sensitive data. So, okay, for the visual level security, we need to define one key concept. I will be calling it access scope across this whole session. So access scope is basically the different level of access differing by visual. So just Poland for the left-hand side, more countries for the right-hand side. To achieve this, we need to first tell Power BI how do we want to map it anyway. So we will extend our user access table to look something like this table that you have here on the left-hand side. So we will add one more column that's called the access scope, which will define what's like the standard access that I should have, just Poland, and what's the extended scope. That's some more countries. And you can see that I also added some redundant rows, the ones that are more that have the more intense purple shade. So this is the extended scope. We need to just map what should I have access to. That's point number 1. Next, what we need to do, we need to tell Power BI which visuals should display which access scope. So which one is the standard visual, which one is the extended visual, and so on. So for this, I have created, and we will also create one more table that will be called just access scope table. For now, it will contain two values, standard and extended. Those are the same values that we can see in the user access table. So just Poland or more countries, including United States, France, Germany, and so on. And then we need to tag each visual with this access scope. So visual level filters will work just perfectly for it. For that reason, so that we tell that, hey, one visual, let's say our column chart or the table on the left-hand side is just the standard access, while another visual should be the extended access. So that's the right-hand side visual. So we need to kind of tag each of the visuals to the respective scope. That's it in case of theory. I hope that was relatively simple. If not, it should become in just a sec when I will guide you through it. So now let's get back into Power BI. Okay, we've got it. And maybe let me do the show first. So I will actually show you that this technique works. And now if I will view as Greg, as me, you will see that the tables are actually differing by the amount of data I am seeing. So left-hand side, just Poland. For the right-hand side, I see some more countries. I've selected just 4, but just as well, you could include 100 or 10, whatever is the business need. Okay, so with that, let's look what changes and modifications to the standard row-level security were done to incorporate this. So let's look at the model first. That's it. And the part that I'm now circling over, that was the original part. That's what we had before. Well, the access scope, t-access scope table is the one that is used for tagging. I have added it. So let's walk through it. The t-access scope table, maybe let's start from this one. It's just a super simple table with, just 2 names, 2 rows for the standard and extended access. No more, no less. I just added it as the enter data option in Power Query. So just something really basic, but you can automate it just as well in case you would like to. Then the user access table. So our mapping of users to the regions, to their countries. And now you can see that Greg, so me, I have access to the Poland as part of the standard scope, and to Poland, Germany, and France, and United Kingdom, as part of the extended scope. We can add as many as we would like here as well. Now, the access scope table, so the tagging table, is connected to mapping to the table that maps our users to their countries with just a standard one-to-many relationship that goes with just a single filter direction from the access scope to user access. So that if basically we say for a given visual that our access scope is standard, then this table will automatically filter the user to country mapping table to just standard. And then remember from the user principal name, so checking who is currently logged in, we should be able to further filter it so that we know that it's just me, it's just Greg, and it's just the standard access for now. This is what each visual should know at this point, so that they will know who is logged in and what is the access scope, so the number of rows in the countries table that should be filtered, it's extended, then it should show something like this. Perfect. And for the definition of the role itself, I didn't change anything. It still looks exactly the same. So it's just comparing the user email from the table, from the access table, to the email of the current logged in user. Perfect. And then remember, there was one more point that we need to do for visual level security to work. That was tagging, somehow telling Power BI which visual is which access scope. So extended or the standard one. So I have already done that as a filter on the visual level, and it comes exactly from the access scope table. Maybe let's remove that filter and do it once again. So I will expand the access scope table that contains just the one column and two values, the standard or extended. And I will tell Power BI now that our profit margins table is the one that should be extended. Okay, that works. Since the mapping of the users contains just me and Joanna, it already got filtered to some rows because, well, for example, we don't have anyone that should have access to China, so that was filtered out immediately. But if you would have it like set up for more key account managers, then you shouldn't see basically any effect from applying this visual filter. And consequently, we have a similar filter applied for the sales cost and profit table, so the one with more confidential, more sensitive data. But here we are saying it's standard. So let's see it once again, how it works. I will log in, I will impersonate me. And you can see that this works actually. In the left-hand side, you can see that there's just Poland, so sensitive data isn't getting shown to me for United States, for United Kingdom, for Germany, for France at any point. I only know some aggregated data that gives me more or less the idea of how am I doing in regards to my bonus, but I have no idea like what's the general size of the market in France compared to Poland. Is it twice the size, 3 times the size, or whatever? So we are just showing to the user what he or she should absolutely know. With that, I wanted to tell you also some more use cases that this visual level security can be leveraged for before we get further, before we jump further into security of this. So, for example, in case you would like to use it for not giving access to the same to different countries or maybe different products, product brands, product categories, something like that. Maybe different organizational units within your organization. You can also use it to, for example, define departmental roles. So there could be a visual that is tagged, for example, as marketing that shows some marketing data. So results of your CEOs, search engine optimizations, results of your campaigns, and so on. And there could be a sales visual, like this one, for example, that shows raw sales data. And then we could have, let's say, a very sensitive visual that could be like intended only for HR colleagues with payrolls, for example, with your compensations. So the HR visual, the table with compensations of all colleagues within the firm, probably isn't something that everyone should see. But still, if that fits from the same data set, you would not really be able to make other people not see anything there. So with such a technique as the visual level security, you can, for example, define the access scopes not as standard or extended, but as HR, marketing and sales roles, something cross-departmental, and just tag people who should have access to the HR table, who should have access to the sales table, and so on. so that if someone from another role would log in, then they wouldn't basically see any of the payroll data. So that's a very useful technique for such use cases as well. Then, if you would like to have something like that, then instead of saying countries or access scope extended standard, you would just have the names of the departments here and have all the visuals tagged as respective departments, probably. So you would say that, hey, this is an HR department, another one is a sales department. Consequently, you are not limited to just 2 or 3 levels of access scopes. You can have just as many as you want, but I would also not advise having too much because, well, obviously the more roles you have, the more options, the more difficult it gets to administer and maintain all of that. So just even though you theoretically can, doesn't mean you should have like 100 access scopes, because that might be a little nightmare to then answer a question like who has access to what. It would be nearly impossible to say at that point. So I'm showing you how to do things, but with great power comes great responsibility. You should also always be careful on how to best do something, why do something and not something else, just so that it doesn't bring more pain than it actually brings value add. Okay, and with that, let's go to one more point in the agenda today, which is very, very important. That is securing the visual level security even more. Because if we would live in an ideal world, like something like this, and we very thoroughly tag each and every visual to their respective access scope, so extended or standard, then we shouldn't basically be in any trouble. But as Power BI developers, I bet that you have not seen any dashboard that would look like the one that I have here, which has just like one page and 2 visuals on it. With this one, it's very, very easy to be diligent and make sure that each of the visuals, each of your charts, tables, pivot tables, and so on is tagged to the appropriate access scope. In real life scenarios, you probably would have like 10 charts on this page, and you would have at least 5 pages in this report altogether. So at some point, it might be tedious to basically make sure that everything is tagged correctly, that each visual is tagged with their access scope. And unfortunately, this is basically the world we're living in and business reality. So we can basically already see what might be a threat for this solution. So basically, if we forget to tag one visual, what would happen? So let's get back to this sales cost and profit visual that contains some sensitive data. Me as Greg should only see Poland here. But if we forget to tag this visual, so we remove the visual level filter in this specific example, then it becomes a bit of a haste, because we see way too much data. We see the extended access scope as for now, so that might already qualify as a data leakage, confidentiality breach, and so on. And certainly that's not something that you would like. So we should be able to somehow counteract this issue. So to say that if we forget to tag a visual with the respective access scope, we should do something else. Maybe do not show anything at all in this table. Maybe assume like the least privilege. So if we do not tag anything as if we do not tag this visual with the respective access scope, we just say, hey, then let's use the standard access scope, so just Poland. Or we can maybe yield an error so that this visual doesn't like even render. It's not empty, but just returns an error message. All options are fine, and I will show you how to implement them. But just to satiate your fears, this is the only weakness of this technique that I have discovered of visual level security. It was implemented production-wise for a major client of mine. Works up until this day, and there are no any security breaches or concerns so far, as long as we implement one more security measure in. So let's do that actually. I will share one more Power BI. Here it is. Looks pretty similar. I didn't basically change anything in the model yet. You can see that if I view as me, that's still the same result basically. But here I've got things secured, fortunately, so that we have some countermeasures and safety locks in case we forget to tag something. How does that work? So I will view as me one more time, and I will intentionally delete the filter that is tagging this visual to the standard access scope. And you can see that this time I got an error. So the visual failed to render at all, but let's see what did the error say. It says access scope not specified for this visual. Okay, that might be a quite informative message that specifically says what's wrong. But well, since the visual failed to render at all, it's also a pretty drastic measure. We can have some others, but let's first see how is this even implemented. So basically what we want to do to secure this is checking if for a given visual, we've got more than one access scope visible. Because if we tag a visual with the proper access scope, whether it's the standard or extended, we'll have just one row visible in the t-access scope table. So that's this one. So we intend to always have just one row visible per visual, because we should be filtering for either this one or this one, or any other one if you'd have a different setup. And technically, you should have that logic implemented in every measure. So in sales, profit, cost, profit margin, and so on. But you see that already having a report that has 10 visuals per page and 5 pages, that would be super tedious and even more difficult to maintain. So that's not really an option. For that, for securing the whole thing, we will use something that's called a calculation group that is created via tabular editor 2 or 3, or recently from Power BI Desktop as well. And for that, we will just, for the security feature, like a safety lock, we will leverage this calculation group so that we do not have to write in each of the measures that, hey, you should first check if if this visual is properly tagged before displaying any data. No, we just want to do that once and make sure it works. So let's see how can we create it. Calculation group is basically something that's like your custom function, custom transformation of the data in each of the measures that's like applied on top of the existing logic. So let me quickly guide you through it. I already have this implemented, and it's called VLS on. So it's our safety switch. And first of all, in the definition, we will see if we have just one user access available at a given time. If we have more than one, so that condition is false, then we will return, maybe let me draw it once again so that we can properly understand. So this is bad. If we have more than one access scope at a time, we should then return an error. In case all things or everything is good, so the access scope is not greater than one, so we have the visual properly tagged, so it's either only standard or extended. Then we show the selected measure. This is another function in DAX that just doesn't, that just brings up the currently iterated measure, doesn't change anything about it. But in case things went wrong, so we failed to tag something, we will, for example, return an error. So this is the option that I have already shown you. A pretty drastic one, but also a one that is very easy to spot and troubleshoot, and maybe during a testing phase of the newest release that will be spotted and fixed. So if we have more than one access scope defined, we will, in this case, return an error, and the visual will fail to render at all. The error says access scope not specified for this visual. It could also say like, please contact our help desk at something at contoso.com for assistance, so that the error is even more informative. So let's see that in action once again. I will view as me, and I will intentionally remove the filter from our sales cost and profit table. Nothing rendered, very safe. There's absolutely no way that someone will see more data than it was intended for their eyes. Pretty drastic, because it's like a very straightforward error, and well, doesn't look very good, but also very easy to spot. Okay, let's see another version. So maybe a less drastic one would be just showing an empty table instead of yielding an error. So I will just show blank instead of an error. Blank will just kill the contents of the whole table. Let's see that as well. Okay, you can see if I have the access defined as standard and the visual is properly tagged, then we have just one row, perfect. If I forget to tag it, well, no data in the table for you, dear user, and no risk of data leakage also. But that is also not, neither too informative. I mean, the user might think that, hey, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe this is a filter combination that doesn't have any data into it, that doesn't have any data in it, or maybe the report is broken. That's the worst option. So a safe option, but also not super informative. And we can see the last option, one that I like pretty much because it's user-friendly. So we can assume instead the least privilege rule. So we know that the least privilege in our case is the standard use case, standard scope, so just Poland for me. So in case I forgot to tag something, I forgot to tell Power BI that this is either standard or extended, I will just assume that I meant standard, so just Poland. Let's see that as well. Okay, so now it's still tagged. Let's turn the tagging off, and you can see that even though I do not have the visual tagged, it defaults to the Poland. Same thing will happen for the profit margins if I forget to tag it. So this is also pretty user-friendly option as a fail-safe. But on the other hand, this might go unnoticed for ages because the data displays, it's just not the right access scope, but there is something in the visual. And it might not be noticed for quite a long time until someone finally asks that, hey, maybe I should see a bit more data in this specific visual. And okay, one last thing about the two last points about the security of the VLS is that basically this whole fail-safe using calculation groups assumes one thing, that we also need to somehow filter the report. So we need to activate the switch, basically. So how I usually do it, and how I also recommend you to, is that we take this calculation group that we have just created. It will display just as another table and as one column. we take it and we put it as the filter on all pages, so that we just need to have it turned on once, not on each and every page. And we can just lock it, maybe hide the filter so that no one can remove it. This way, it's a single turn on, turn off switch of the failsafe that will apply across all pages. And I'm assuming that we can just, each time we are uploading a new version, we are publishing a new version of this Power BI, we can check that this is still turned on. It's not turned off by default, and it will then, the whole security will work. In the rare case that we both forget to tag a visual and we somehow remove this filter, well, the whole thing will break again, but I'm assuming that we can just keep this turned on all the time, as it's just this one single place, no more, no less. So that's one requirement that we need to check, that our failsafe that prohibits too much data being shown for a specific visual will be turned on, just once here, and we can check that each time for security reasons. Okay, but other than that, in terms of securing the visual level security, that's basically the only weakness that we can pretty much, like, forgetting to tag something with the proper access scope is the only problem that we can that was identified with this, and it can be quickly and easily fixed in a pretty robust way by just using a calculation group and applying it to the whole report, just as I did here. So I would recommend that, and definitely if you decide to implement visual level security, please include the fail-safe as well, or otherwise the surprise might be a bit unpleasant. There's one more thing that I wanted to tell you about visual level security. Let's keep the filter on for now, because you saw that basically I was tagging individual visuals with their proper access scope. But actually, there's no reason why we shouldn't basically apply this access scope filter to the whole page. Let's do that. Why not? I will put it as the whole page. So it's extended now, and we can see that it will also work for me. If I would decide that this whole page, well, it's not actually extended anymore, it's just standard, I can retag the whole page to be just standard, and I will see only standard data scope across the whole page. And this way, we can upscale the visual level security to basically page level security, so that we can say that this whole page is the standard data scope, while the other one is an extended one. Or we can say that, hey, this page is just marketing data, the other one contains sensitive HR data that only selected users should have access to, for example, the payrolls. So you can very quickly upscale the visual level security to page level security as well, if you would like to. Okay, with that, the live demo part is basically concluded. Let me quickly wrap it up, and I will and we will have the Q&A session. So let's wrap it up in 1 or 2 minutes. So visual level security, basically the concept and the idea is that by visual, we make the different data available to the user. In our case, we used countries, so that I have access to just Poland for one visual. I have access to United States, Poland, France, Germany, and whatsoever in another visual. We can upscale it to also differ by page, for example, not only by the visual. Visual level security, as you saw, level registry, low level security as the core, but we have some additional data and structures on top to enable this varying access rights. Visual level security, while it grants a lot of power, it also requires you to tag all of the visuals with their access scopes or the pages. Since you need to expose a bit more data because of this access scope to the user, I would highly recommend that you implement a fail-safe. For example, this calculation group that will prohibit showing too much data and potential data leak in case there would be someone would forget to tag a visual with or a page with the access scope. So my favorite is the least privilege rule, but you can go for any you want. Basically, I also like the completely yielding an error on the visual because that is very easy to spot and troubleshoot as well. And okay, with that, we conclude. And in case there would be any questions in the chat, for now, I would be happy to take them on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Greg. And no questions in chat yet, but if you have any questions, now is a great time to ask. I'll vamp for 20, 30 seconds, give people an opportunity in case they do want to ask questions. This is your chance to do it. So while I'm doing a little bit of vamping, I do want to do a quick reminder that this is the last BI and data science meeting, the fourth Tuesday of the month that we're going to have in 2024. We'll pick up again in January of 2025. We'll also have our advanced DBA meetings, our main meetings, second and third Tuesdays of the month, respectively. Remember that the main meetings are in person and the advanced DBA is online. We'll also have Shop Talk continuing to go through the rest of the year. So there's still plenty of us. Just we're packing up the BI and data science for the year because we don't want to overlap with Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that was my vamping. Looks like we have no questions. I think you did an outstanding job of explaining the concept. And so,
Okay. In case any of the participants you would have some more questions, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. Just write me a private message. I would be happy to explain any more on this topic or any other Power BI one. And you can also check out my YouTube channel. There might be some interesting content there as well as the visual level security later on. Thank you.
for sure, thank you. And with that, we are going to wrap up for this evening. So appreciate everybody coming in for this Tuesday evening. And until we see each other at a future TriPass meeting, take care.